Today's video, I'm going to show you how to remove the door, at least the inside part of this door on your Tesla Model Y. This is the Juniper model, which is the 2026 and above. And the easiest way to know if you have a 2026 is you have one light bar across the front instead of those two split ones. If your Model Y has the split lights, well then you have a 2025 or under, and the process is going to be different. All that you're going to need to do this is really three different things. The first of which is some kind of little pry tool like this. The second thing you need is some kind of T25 Torx bit. I have something like this, a driver that I've put on a drill. You could also use some kind of hand driver. As long as it's a T25 and you have a little bit of length, it'll work just fine. You do have a few screws like this with that T25 head that you'll have to pull out of this door in order to pull this whole little thing off. And lastly, you'll need, well, what I'm sitting on right now, which is a 5-gallon bucket or just something like that, because when we're eventually going to pull this whole door out, it'll be connected with a bunch of different wires. There's all kinds of electricity in this door that you'll want something to set this door on until you have a chance to undo all the wiring, or if depending on what you're trying to take the door off for, you may not even want to take all the electric out. I know for most applications I've taken it apart with, that wasn't necessary, so I just needed something to literally hold it while I did my work before I could snap this back into place. The 5-gallon bucket is almost the exact size you need to be able to set this little door frame on a decent level without going through a bunch of extra work. Now let's start removing the door. The first thing you have to do is take out these 3 little screws. Now they're all a little strategically hidden, one more than the others. I'll show you them all up close, but just so you know, the first one here is right up in here outside of the little push button. The second one is going to be strapped underneath here, the little spot. And the third one is a little bit sneaky, but let's look at these first two. So this first one, as mentioned, is right underneath the little button area. This pulls out with that T25 Torx. It's really very simple. The second one here is almost underneath the little handle area right in the middle. Again, T25 Torx. And again, pulls right out. Then that third and final screw you're gonna have to take out is just here on the edge of the door. You notice here you got this little reflector right here, and that reflector just pops right out with that little pry tool we had earlier. Then that third and final rescrew, you'll be able to see that head of it, which again, T25 Torx head, it just backs right out. And I can tell you from experience, put this little reflector somewhere where you're not going to lose it, because it is very easy to lose. And you'll make a note when you first take it off that there is writing on this that does implicitly say that a certain end is up. It won't clip in if you have it the wrong way. You don't want to accidentally force it and break it. Now that I got those 3 screws out, it's time to remove the whole panel from the door. This does have to be done in a certain way. And when it's done right, it's actually not very difficult at all. But there is going to be a little top lip that kind of hooks around, almost like a reversed J, all the way through the top of this door. And actually it's the same as you move on this little speaker here. This speaker is not actually connected to the door. Now it's also clipped to the door, and then of course there's wires running from inside this panel up to the speaker, so it's not just going to fall off, but it also is clipped down. So when you begin to separate this door, we're going to lift slightly up. Now it's only about 1/4 inch, but just slightly up first, and then it's going to pull straight out. But despite the fact I said the first thing you have to do is actually lift this little top lip up, well, that's not entirely true. What you need to do now is actually loosen some of these clips all the way around, if not start to pop them out, and then pop it up. So there are clips periodically all throughout this, just long peg clips that go into a little female hole that they just kind of literally just clip into place. So it doesn't technically matter which one you start prying out first. However, I feel like it's really nice to be able to get it open just enough somewhere where you can get your fingers behind it to where you can pull evenly. Now this bottom part here, as you'll see on your own, is much stiffer than this top part. Now you still have to be careful because you could break this, but you're gonna have to kind of learn to balance enough force to get it off, but also being gentle enough you're not just breaking these clips open. And whereas I'd normally speed this up, I just did this one in real time just to let you see how easy, but also some of the challenge it was. Right there, you saw that first big clip. And now I got my fingers underneath, I switch positions. And again, you can see I'm actually using a decent amount of force, but once you start getting a couple open, then they all start just to really fall into place. But again, this one up here you saw again was a little tight. And once it finally came open, then I could do all of them all the way around. And then and only then, once all these clips are out, you can see I'll lift this slightly up off that lip. And then once loose, I balance it on that bucket. I think now you can see with the door off why this bucket is so important to have. The height of it is almost perfect where it needs to be. I'm setting the main bulk of it here on the bucket, and then there's one little tip up there where the speaker is. It's actually sitting on the door. Now, depending on why I needed to separate this door in the first place, I can likely do everything I need to do right here without even totally disconnecting it. You'll see when you look down in here that this little wire here is not disconnected, right? This is all still part. Now the benefit is when it's hanging, it's pulling from this little anchor point and not actually pulling from a harness. It's actually fastened there really well. And you're also gonna have this little wire here connected. And again, based on what you're trying to do, you may have to remove this little felt blanket, which is really just held in with a couple little hooks. To show you a little bit more of the construction of how these all pop in, let me pull out one of these little clips. So if you'll see here, these just have a little groove like this, and this groove slides in there like this, and that's where they'll normally sit. You can buy these separate. I've seen them on eBay and Amazon. It might be a little more difficult for newer models, but eventually they'll all be there. So if you were to break one of these, they are replaceable. But really, if you do this right, you shouldn't be breaking at least out a bunch of these. That being said, I do feel like each and every one of these clips has a limited number of times it can pull in and out. Try to limit how often you're having to open this and close it, because each and every time you're risking breaking these. You do actually still have those 3 main bolts holding this onto the metal frame of the door. It's not like just because you break one of these, it's gonna fall off as you get in the car, as you slam the door. So now with this off, you're gonna see a better idea of why I chose to pull right here. There's this little female slot here that one clip into, but there's not another one here until this little female slot up here. So if you notice, I put my pry tool right in around here, and this was the easiest spot to get my fingers underneath because I had this play, because this is the biggest opening from here to here. Whereas you see up top, these little holes are all much closer together, so you can't get that little bend. Or maybe slightly down below in this little section right here, just to get that first clip out, and then the rest will all fall suit. Now just a couple tips putting this whole contraption back together. Let's take a little closer look at that. So this little metal right here, that's the clip that's gonna speaker is going to hang on. So this little part of the speaker here is just going to clip right onto it there. This little gap here all the way around is what the edge of this little plastic here is going to fit into. So again, we're just sliding this up and over onto that clasp until it's in all the way down. Now that I've got this top lip pushed down into place, it's all really secure. But a mistake that I've made in the past, and many people do if they're not careful, is now that you've got that in, you just go hammering the door with your fist all the way back around, knocking it into place. You do have to realize that unless you slid this on at the exact perfect angle, which is nearly impossible, each of those individual white clips I showed you earlier may not be fitting into their individual holes. That's where I kind of peek on the side. If you can see this one here, it's actually not lined up. It's just a little bit too high because I started high hooking this lip and now I push down. If I don't adjust this at all, I hit this with my fist, I'm gonna snap that little clip off. So it's nice to make just a little bit of space and just adjust this clip in such a way where now it's gonna line up and want to go into that hole we just created. Before I smash it into place, let's check the same with the other ones all the way down. Again, this one here needed slight adjustment. And now that I'm getting close, it is helpful to kind of just get one of them into place. Now this one I did speed up a little bit, but same thing all the way around. It wasn't the best camera angle to catch this, but making sure those clips are lined up, then you just knock them into place. And if you had to take apart a rear door, it's nearly identical. You're still gonna have those 2 screws that you're gonna pull out, those T25 Torx bits, that one up here. You're still gonna have this one down below in here, but on this one, you don't have that reflector on the back, so there's only the 2 screws to pull out. This is all put in correctly. I feel like, honestly, you really only need one of the 2 types of anchors, either of those plastic clips or these screws. You could probably get away with not putting the screws back in, but that being said, put the screws back in. And that's what I'm doing here, putting all 3 of these screws back in, the one on the end, the one underneath the button, and the one underneath the handle. And it's that simple. And if you've watched this far, you better hit that like and subscribe button. Come on, you know this helped you. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.